So to get started on our rickrack pumpkin, we have to make our circle to start out with. So we're going to chain 4 and work 11 DCs back into this first chain. Oh goodness. Let's try that again. And okay, so there's 12 DCs. If you count, when you count the first 3 chains as 1 DC. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're going to slip stitch in the top of the chain 3 to join that up. And then in order to make our rickrack pattern, we need to change colors. So we're just going to take our white yarn and loop it over and pull through here and kind of pull that tight. And the first thing you're going to do with your white yarn is slip stitch in between the chain 3 and that first DC. So from here on out, for the rest of the pattern, we're just going to be working in the gaps in between the DCs. We're not going to work in the tops of the stitches anymore. This is what's going to make our rickrack zigzag really well. So once we have our slip stitch, we can chain 3 and DC back into that same hole. And since this needs to be on an increase, we're going to do that again in the same hole. So we're going to make 2 more DCs into that hole. Okay, then we're going to skip 2 DCs. So this one and this one we're going to skip, and we're going to put 4 DCs in between these 2. So there's 1 set and 2 sets, and so everything's kind of in 2 sets of sets of 2 DCs, excuse me. So we're going to skip these 2, and working in between these 2 DCs, we're going to put 4 more DCs. Okay, and then we're going to do that again. Skip 2, work in between these 2, and put 4 DCs. Skip 2, put 4 DCs in between these 2. Skip 2 and put 4 DCs in between these 2. Okay, and we're back to where we started. There's our last DC and there's our starting chain. So we're going to slip stitch in the top of the starting chain of this round, and change colors again. Now since this is a pumpkin and it's not going, the backside's not going to show, I'm just going to go ahead and carry my 2 colors on the inside, so there's just going to be kind of a line going across where we change colors, but you're not going to be able to see it because this will be the inside of the pumpkin. So we're going to change colors here. And with this new color, we've got our starting chain from the previous row and our first DC. We're going to slip stitch in between them and chain 3, and then DC back into that same hole. Now we're only going to do 2 in this one because now we need to stagger our increases. So this is basically increasing in each space, 2 DC space. So next we need to increase in every other 2 DC space. So this is our first one, so we're going to increase in this next one. So when we skip 2, we're going to be working in between these 2 DCs, and we're going to put our 4 DCs right here. So skipping 2, we're going to go into this hole. We're just going to do 2 DCs here. And then skip 2, and we have this 2 DC cluster, so we're going to work 4 into that one. Then skip 2 and work 2 into this one. And then skip 2 and work 4 into this one. Then skip 2 and work 2 DCs into this space. Skip 2 and work 4 DCs into that space. So we're going all the way around, putting our increases in every other 2 DC space now. Or space between 2 DCs is probably how I should say that. So here's the next space. 1 here. 1 set. Goodness sakes, that's splitting a lot, isn't it? And an increase here. And you can see it's kind of starting to rick-rack. It's a little harder at the increases to see it. So when we get going down the sides, it'll be really nice and even and zigzaggy. But you're kind of getting the feel for it here on the increase rounds. Two there, and then our last one has 4 in it again. And we're going to slip stitch in the top of that round and change colors. And then we're going to do it again with the white, but this time we're going to do increases every 3rd cluster. So we're going to slip stitch in that same hole between the chain and the first DC. I'm going to chain 3 and DC in that same space. Skip 2 and DC 2 into this space. Skip 2 and DC 4 into this space. So this is our increase now. So 2 here. 2 here. for here. So you understand how that's working. So this next round, you're going to do this round and switch colors again and do a round that has 3 2DC clusters and then a 4. And then one more that has 4 2DC clusters and then an increase round. And then we're going to start going straight down. So do the rest of your increase rounds. I will catch you in the next white round, which will be the last increase round here. So when you've finished your last white round, your last increase round, I will see you there and we'll start going straight down. Okay, so we're to our next step. We've gotten all of our increase rounds done. This is going to not necessarily sit perfectly flat, as you can see without me pressing it down. Mine has a couple of ripples. That's okay. We're going to make this guy round, and then we're going to, squish it in some places to make it in a pumpkin shape. So a little bit of rippling is totally fine. This does not need to sit perfectly flat. So don't stress if your piece isn't sitting perfectly flat. So now we're going to start doing just the straight, even rick-rack rounds that go all the way around 6 times to make the sides of our pumpkin. And these are going to be the ones that show the most. So let's get my hook back out here. We're going to change colors like we always do. And here's where I've been carrying. I should show you this. Here's where this yarn has been carrying. So there's orange, white, and then orange, and then white. And I'm just carrying them along the back, and that's just because this is all going to be on the inside and you're not going to be able to see any of it. I would be hiding it better if I was actually going to have a 2-sided piece, but since this is a pumpkin, we don't need to worry about it. So we're going to just do this like we always do here. Slip stitch into the space between the chain 3 and the first DC. Chain 3. And DC into that same stitch, and then we're just going to do 2 DCs in each of the spaces, the usual spaces around. So you can see we're going to skip this one and this one, and in this next 2 DC cluster work in between the DCs and put 2 more DCs. And this is where it's going to start feeling like the V-stitch. The V-stitch would be a lot like this, except there would be a chain 1 in between the DCs, which would give it a more gap, like holy feeling. This is like the V-stitch, but without all the holes. So this makes a much tighter fabric. I like using the rick-rack stitch for things like hats and mittens, and things that have stuffing, like this pumpkin, when I want that nice ridgy feeling. Plus, this is a more like jagged zigzag, whereas the V-stitch feels a little bit more floaty. So I personally like this way, especially when I need something that has less holes in it. So you're just going to keep going all the way around, working in those spaces between DCs and doing your color changes exactly the same. But since you're just working even, you're just going to do 2 in every space. And your pumpkin will start to have sides that are nice and even and round down the sides. Now that you've stopped increasing. So you can see mine's already wanting to curve. So it's going to start curving down, and it's just going to cruise along just like that. And you're going to have this really nice rick-rack all the way down. So if you keep going on this for 6 rounds, then you'll have your pumpkin all ready to close up. So do 6 rounds of working the rick-rack stitch even, and I will catch you on the last even round of rick-rack stitches so that we can start decreasing. See you there? Alrighty, so we've done our rick-rack stitch across the rounds that are just worked even. Now we have, here's the top, Sorry, this is kind of close in, but I want you to be able to see how to do the decreases really well, and then I'll zoom out and show you the rest. So this is the way that our rickrack stitch is starting to look. You can see that there are still tiny gaps here, but nothing like if you were to use a V-stitch. A V-stitch is much more airy, so this is going to work really great for our pumpkin. Now we need to do the first decrease round, and in order to do that, we have to kind of count back here. So we have, on the increase rounds, we had 4 and then 2 in each one. That means 5, 6. So we should have 36 V's, which means we need to do 4 V's and then a decrease in order to decrease it the same rate we did increases. So let's change colors here. And start out just like we did with our chain 3 and work a DC into that same space. So that counts as 1. We're going to do, the next one is 2. Three, 4, and then to do a decrease, you're just going to put 1 DC in this next space, and then you're going to want to pull real tight between these two here, and then 1 DC in the next space. So you can see here's our 2 DC cluster, if you will, for the next time around. So that reduces those 2 clusters into 1 cluster. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do 4 regular 2 DC clusters. Let me flatten out for you here. Three. And 4. And then our decrease, which is just 1 DC in this cluster and 1 DC in this cluster. And we've done a decrease. So we're going to do that all the way around, and I'll meet you at the other side. Alright, so I've zoomed out a bit so we can see how this is starting to decrease. Here's our last row that we just did. It ended on this decrease here, so there's 1 DC in this one, 1 in this one, and then we slip stitched into the top just like we always do. Our next decrease round is going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to put 3 clusters between decreases instead of 4, and we're just going to keep doing that to get to the middle. The next round will have 2, the next will have 1, and then you'll just do decreases all the way around. But I wanted you to see what these decreases look like on a decrease, like in a decrease row, so that you know where your hook needs to go. So here's 1, 2, 3, and now is where you really need to be counting stitches, because you're going to put 1 DC in this cluster and then 1 in between your 2 of your last decrease there. So you're counting this as a cluster. So if you really are counting stitches, you're going to skip 2 DCs, skip this one, skip that one, put 1 DC here in between, and then you're going to skip DC, and put 1 right here, if my fingers will work. So you'll see that decrease is now part of another decrease. But the goal here is to always have 2 DCs in between. So you're going to skip 2 here and put the next one in between. So that's what makes your rickrack work, is that between the clusters is the 2 DCs from the previous row. And so that's why that's gonna look right. So keep going around that one. So I'll do one more set of decreases. So I'll do 2. That's 2 clusters. This is 3 clusters. Oops. And then our decrease is 1 DC here and 1 DC here. See how that's working? So you're just going to keep doing your decrease rounds like that until you're down to the second to last row, which will be not quite all our 6 decreases around. So we'll stop when you only have 1 cluster and then a decrease, 1 cluster, decrease, 1 cluster, decrease. So when we get there, I will catch up to you and we can stuff and close our pumpkin. Alrighty, so we've decreased to the point where we just have 1 2DC cluster and then decreases. So this next and last round is going to be all decreases all the way around. I went ahead and cut our white off because this will be the last round using it. So, and then I went ahead and stuffed our pumpkin. So here's how it's starting to look. Nice and fluffy. Don't overstuff these because they do still have holes in them, so don't go nuts or anything. So we're gonna do our last color change here. Oops, and that's not gonna help with the color change, is it? Okay. And to do decreases all the way around, it's just gonna feel kind of weird. So in that first space, we're gonna slip stitch just like we always do and chain 3, and that's gonna count as the stitch here. So then we're just going to skip 2 DCs and DC in this space, skip 2 DCs and DC in this space. You gotta pull these as tight as you can get them. Get that white out of there. Skip 2 DCs and DC in that space. Skip 2 DCs and DC in this space. And I'm just trying to get these as tight as I can get them, and you'll see once we pull it all tight, it'll squish up. Skip 2 DCs and DC in this space. Skip 2 DC in this space. Skip 2 and DC in this space, and I'm getting all spread out here. Skip 2, okay, I'm going to tuck that white out of the way now. Skip 2 and DC in this space. Skip 2, DC. Skip 2, DC. Skip 2, DC. And then you have to look for the top of your starting chain. It's over here now. It's kind of hard to get in there when it's all stretched out like this, but oh dear. Let's try that again, shall we? Yep, slip stitch into that one. So we're down to the place where we're going to pull this tight. So I'm going to pull out a really, really long, here's how long my extra is going to be. Very, very long, okay? You want a ton of extra yarn to work with here, because what we're going to do is cut that off, pull all the way through, just like we would for any other finish, but we're going to use this ridiculously long tail to shape our pumpkin as well as to close up this hole. So let's go ahead and push our pumpkin out of the way here and get our trusty needle and thread that bad boy. Then coming back to our pumpkin, you're going to put the needle through the whole stitch of all of these, and this is just for so that you decrease the stretch as much as possible. You want to go through the whole stitch. So you're going to go through all 12 of these guys. And I know it's kind of hard to work with that really long tail, but bear with me. And if you want to start pulling tight to start with, you can. Sometimes it makes it easier, sometimes it doesn't. Ah, I caught my scissors. Okay, there. And I've caught my white yarn. No. Tuck that back in there. And then back through that starting chain stitch there. Oops. All right, so we're gonna give that a good pull and it'll close up. And it kept our rickrack pattern intact through the bottom. So I'm gonna get this, see if I can get this even a little tighter here. And then I'm gonna tie this off because we're gonna use this string now, or the rest of this tail, to finish off our pumpkin here. So here's the top of our pumpkin, nice and squishy. Take in your needle, going straight through the bottom, kind of smoosh it together till you can reach through the other side. And get your needle out the other side. See it? Oh no! Out the dead center of the other side. And pull. Now we're just going to go around the outside of the pumpkin and back through the middle again, and then do it again. Try to stick it through right in the middle. There it is. And pull. Now, when you pull it tight, it's going to squeeze in your edges like a pumpkin. So don't squeeze too tight, but you'll see a good squeeze is always a good thing with these pumpkins. So we're going to go around again, back down through the middle, looking for our needle. There it is. Pull and pull tight, and you're getting those nice little pumpkin creases. So go all the way around, do as many of these as you want. You can do a whole bunch or only a couple. I usually do about 6 just for so it's nice and uniform. And then I will meet you back here. Okey-doke, so our pumpkin edges are all made. It's all shaped the way we want it to be. Creased in all the corners. You can give them nice fluff like this, and then they kind of puff up. That's always kind of nice. Or you can smash it flat, however you really want your pumpkin to be. And then you can decide which side you like better, your decrease side or your increase side to be up. I think for this one I'm going to go decrease side up, just because I like how wrinkly it got on top. And I grabbed some wine corks out of my extensive wine cork collection. Cough, cough. And I'm going to use these as the stems. I picked this one. This is one of my bottles of Game of Thrones wine, so it's got the Lannister symbol on it. I just thought that was nifty, so I'm going to use it. And then I like tacky glue, this bad boy, for my adhesive when I'm working with something other than other fabric. So fabric glue would work, but not as well. At least not this for this particular project. So I want to get a fair amount of glue on there. Hang on, my glue has to like do its gluey thing. There we go. I get a pretty good amount going and shove it right down on there. And it is going to need to dry for a couple hours just because yarn is temperamental when it comes to glue. So we're going to let that guy dry, and then when he's all done, you'll have a pumpkin with a cute little cork stem, and you've learned the rickrack stitch and how to increase and decrease using the rickrack stitch, which is a really great tool and can be used for all kinds of stuff, from hats and mittens to cool little pumpkins. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!